tonight.
Between now and April 2nd.
Another twist in the tariff tale. Donald Trump hits the pause button for another month. Multiple agencies take action after a series of drug overdoses in Saskatoon. And what comes next for Saskatchewan teachers now that they're closer to a deal with the government?
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, March 6th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams. Thank you for joining us. Donald Trump has walked back some of the tariffs he imposed on Canada and Mexico on Tuesday. The new exemptions come just a day after he gave a reprieve to the auto sector. He also lowered the levies on Canadian potash imports from 25% to 10%. Megan Fitzpatrick reports from Washington.
Between now and April 2nd, this makes it much more favorable for our American car manufacturers.
Another twist in the North American tariff war today. In the Oval Office this afternoon, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that essentially paused some of the tariffs he imposed 2 days ago on Canada and Mexico. For goods that fall under the existing trade agreement between the three countries, they'll now be exempt until April 2nd. Goods that don't fall within that deal are still subject to the tariffs.
It's just a modification short term because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
Earlier in the day, Trump announced on social media that he was giving Mexico the 1-month break. Trump wrote he was doing so out of respect for President Claudia Sheinbaum and said they were working hard together to stop illegal immigration and drugs from coming across the border. Trump initially proposed the tariffs as punishment for failing to tighten the border, though his administration has also expressed other reasons for using tariffs, like wanting to generate more domestic manufacturing. Trump's praise for Sheinbaum was in contrast to what he wrote about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, laying blame on him for the tariffs and saying he's done a terrible job for Canada. Trump and Trudeau had a heated phone call Wednesday, and afterwards Trump said he wasn't satisfied with Canada's efforts to stop fentanyl from getting into the U.S. But he's facing backlash for his tariff policy and for the retaliatory tariffs Canada has imposed as a result on products like Kentucky bourbon.
Almost every industry in Kentucky has come to me and said it will hurt our industry and push up prices of homes, cars. And so I'm going to continue to argue against tariffs.
Trump is still set to impose tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum next week, and yet another round of tariffs are set for April 2nd on trading partners around the world, which means there are still weeks of uncertainty ahead. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Washington.
And with the tariffs on pause once again, it's all causing uncertainty for local businesses and people in Saskatchewan. Jeffrey Tram has that part of the story.
Premier Scott Moe announced Monday that U.S. booze would be taken off the shelves in response to Donald Trump's tariffs. Moe ordered SLGA to stop buying U.S. alcohol and stop selling its existing stock to retailers. But liquor stores are still able to sell the remaining inventory. Some places are choosing to put it on sale. But with Trump walking back on tariffs for another month, a government statement to CBC says, in part, for now, the measures announced Wednesday by Premier Moe regarding U.S. alcohol and procurement remain in effect. The roller coaster of emotions is causing stress for business owners in the province.
It's not an end, it's just more uncertainty. Frankly, it's unsettling. I don't know if that's a tactic or a strategy, whatever it is. It's if that is the strategy, it's working.
The uncertainty is there. You've already put the mistrust in. You've already broken the relationship.
Consumers also expressed their concerns with the ongoing tariff threats.
It's another negotiation thing, but yeah, it would be bad for Canada if it goes through.
I think it's very important to shop local. There's no tariff on local stuff, local made stuff, and we need to support our local business to stimulate our economy.
Business owners say lifting domestic trade barriers will be key in navigating these difficult times.
It's extremely complicated, and there's a ton of tax dollars and regulations and red tape and hoops you have to jump through. So no one's ever really wanted to touch that before, but we'll see if it does.
And while it's a challenge for those in Saskatchewan, some say it's a chance to embrace patriotism.
I think it just made me feel a lot more Canadian. I'm conscious when I go shopping. I'm conscious when I watch shows on TV. And I guess that's a good thing that he's done, has made us far more Canadian.
Jeffrey Tram, CBC News, Regina.
Now, this constant back and forth has also meant headaches for farmers as they navigate an uncertain market. Alina Mahalik has that story.
Farmers and agriculture businesses on both sides of the Canada-U.S. border could have a challenging spring. The success of their operations remains unclear in the midst of an ongoing trade battle. Both countries have pressed pause on their tariffs for a month, but the threat of 25% tariffs on many agriculture exports is still looming. Saskatchewan's trade minister says that could be a big problem for livestock producers.
The movement of live cattle from the time it's born to the time it's slaughtered up to 4 times across the border. So that's how integrated that we are in the livestock sector. Now, we have also huge packing plants here in Canada, but also depend on live cattle that come from Nebraska, from Iowa, from across the American Midwest.
Stuart Smythe is an agriculture professor at the University of Saskatchewan. He says the U.S. will probably cut back on buying Canadian beef, but that it could mean lower prices at the grocery store for Canadians.
It's possible that some of the American purchasers will just simply say, we're not willing, or it's not cost effective for us to source Canadian beef at this time.
Smythe says American importers might find trading with another country would cost even more because of the rise in global transportation costs. In that case, they may continue to import from Canada and simply pay the 25% tariff. He also says grain farmers will have a tougher time affording equipment.
I think in a lot of cases, farmers would just simply have to delay purchase. I mean, if you're facing a $700,000 to $1 million piece of equipment that's now 25% more expensive.
It's a very complicated market. And I think, again, as we continue to engage with grower groups and associations on both sides of the border, explaining how tariffs are ultimately going to hurt the consumer and hurt the producer, that message is eventually going to resonate.
Smythe says the outcome of this trade war is going to be less income for farmers in both Canada and the U.S., and that Saskatchewan will need to increase exports to other countries for our agricultural products. Helena Mahalik, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Overdoses are spiking in Saskatoon. First responders are scrambling to take action, and the Health Ministry has issued multiple warnings about dangerous drugs in the area. Scott Larson has the latest.
If you're downtown or along 20th Street in Saskatoon, the sound of sirens is a constant backdrop. In just 24 hours, the Saskatoon Fire Department has responded to 37 overdoses.
They're having to assist with breathing, so they're using bag valve mask, they're doing CPR, and then they're having to administer Narcan. So this isn't just administer Narcan and walk away. These are severe life-saving measures that they're having to do, and then administer Narcan.
The ministry says other agencies are also responding to overdoses, and there have been several deaths that may have been connected to the drug poisonings. The ministry says there are dangerous drugs on the streets that may contain fentanyl, benzodiazepine, and other unknown substances. These are tense times at Prairie Harm Reduction, a supervised consumption site. Kayla DeMong says her staff have had to revive 30 people inside the building in just the last month. She says they're also taking naloxone kits to houses where drug users hang out and walking the alleys, handing out kits and checking on people. But she says the naloxone only works on fentanyl and cannot reverse the effects of the benzodiazepine.
This is so traumatizing, and we're all so scared because, we've fortunately, I don't even know how, we've seen very few deaths from this, but people are going to start dying, and that's a lot of people.
DeMong says the public has stepped up donations to help them buy another 200 nasal naloxone kits, but she says it's the government that needs to take the lead.
This is their job. They are responsible to the people of this province. That is our government's job. And they are not doing a very good job at showing up.
In response, our investigators are working diligently to gather intelligence, identify suspects, and conduct an investigation that keeps the public safe.
Thursday afternoon, the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the police also put out an alert saying there's a heightened risk of overdose and death from the illicit drugs in the Saskatoon area. It says free naloxone kits are available at hundreds of locations across the province. Scott Larson, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, one sure sign of spring in Saskatoon, pelicans returning to the weir on the South Saskatchewan River. No, they have not arrived yet, but they will be soon. And now is the time to keep your eyes peeled. Meewasin Valley Authority is bringing back its annual Pelican Watch contest. You can guess the date and time the first pelican perches itself on the weir, and you can win some prizes as well if you guess correctly, or at least close to it. To enter, head to meewasin.com. Now stay with us. Riley Lachek will be joining us with a look at your forecast when we come back. Saskatchewan teachers are closer to getting a contract. Earlier this week, an arbitration board came back with its decision on what needs to be in the deal with the government. It includes a stipulation that class complexity must be addressed, something the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation made a priority during bargaining. Now, teachers' unions in other provinces, like British Columbia, have been successful in getting class complexity negotiated and implemented. And to find out how it can be done here, we are joined by Jason Ellis. He is an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. Jason, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what does addressing class complexity look like where you live?
In British Columbia, we call class complexity class composition often, but it essentially means the same thing. And it usually refers to the number of students with identified special education needs in the class.
And so how well is that working, and how exactly does that work?
It works in that the 60 different collective agreements that British Columbia teacher union locals have negotiated with the Public School Employers Association. Each contains something about the number of identified special education needs students that can be in each class. If the number is exceeded, then they have something called a remedy. And the remedy either provides support for the teacher to purchase materials, non-enrolling teacher support for the teacher, or something, or some other measure to sort of account for the complexity. And the idea is that this allows allows teachers to have sort of an even workload and allows them to best teach their class in that sense.
So the arbitrator's report in Saskatchewan mentions class complexity, but it doesn't really seem to mention anything specific about class size. So how is that kind of tied in, and is that part of complexity?
In British Columbia, it would be treated somewhat or very differently than complexity, and it simply refers to the number of students in the class. And so the collective agreements often cap that number at, say, 19 for kindergarten, 20 for grade 1, and so on. And so when that happens, there's sometimes a remedy, but there's also, the fact that school districts will have to create more classes as their enrollments rise to make sure they stay under the cap. In some other provinces, those classroom caps are in legislation.
For those who say, classroom complexity is something that has to be done outside of the bargaining table, what's your message to those people, especially living in a province that has seen something like this negotiated?
I think people who say that classroom complexity should be worked out by management, by principals or by people in schools, I think they have a very good position. I think that is a perfectly acceptable way to do things. Having said that, teachers' unions have decided that they want to make this part of bargaining, that they want to bargain what they would call their working conditions or children's learning conditions. And so that means that management is going to have to sort of hand over some of that responsibility, it would appear.
So Jason, of course, part of this contract is that teachers have also negotiated a pay increase. How, kind of common, I guess, is that to be put in the contract along with something around classroom complexity?
Once you put classroom complexity in the collective agreement, that means that in just about every round, it will be bargained alongside salary. And, to the extent that bargaining is a zero-sum game, when you give more attention to complexity or to class size, that increases costs. You have to add more teachers to the system. And so when the number of teachers increases, individual teachers may not achieve the same sort of salary gains that they would hope for. As I said, there's only so much money to go around, right? So there's some thought that there's a bit of a trade-off here between class size and complexity and salary.
All right, Jason, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Jason Ellis is an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. Well, I think we're starting to kind of get used to days like this. Nice seasonal or above seasonal temperatures. The sun coming out for many of us and continuing that melt for a lot of us too. But don't get too used to it. There are some chillier days that are ahead of us. Weather specialist Riley Lachuk joins us now for a look at the forecast. Hi, Riley.
So, Ethan, another day where I think I can say rinse and repeat really across much of the province. Looking at some of your afternoon temperatures, -1 in Regina, better than expected, exceeding that forecast high I had of -2 for today. Saskatoon on the freezing mark, really much of south and central around the freezing mark today, +7 in Maple Creek. That's because we continue to be on the warm side of the jet stream here as it cuts across the northern prairies. Here's an area of low pressure that brought a little bit of snow to parts of northern Saskatchewan as we got through the morning hours at least, but things are changing and we are returning to something maybe a little bit more seasonal and even below seasonal for some of us as we get into the next work week. So looking at our upper atmosphere as we get through the weekend, we continue to see ourselves on the warm side of this jet stream for most of us. And that means warmer temperatures and actually a surge in our temperatures as we get toward the weekend, staying above zero into Sunday. But you can start to see this cold pocket of air, this polar jet stream that is weakening and sinking a little bit further south as we get Sunday into Monday. And what that is going to do is return much of northern Saskatchewan into below seasonal temperatures, and even Saskatoon forecasting temperatures several degrees below seasonal as we get into mid next week. So we are looking at this warm stretch of weather ending once we get into next week here, and something more of a reality check as we get toward mid next week for some of us. Satellite and radar, mix of sun and clouds today. Regina actually looking at a mainly sunny sky for the most part. A few stray flurries out of some of this, particularly around Prince Albert into Humboldt, seeing a couple of flurries throughout the afternoon hours. That area of low pressure exits. Behind that, we do see a chance, at least into Friday morning, of a few scattered flurries in eastern parts of the province. The rest of us, though, into a mainly sunny sky. Then comes area of low pressure number 2 riding along the jet stream. Very quick mover as it gets throughout the morning hours on Saturday, and then another weak system moves through. This one bringing a little bit more substantial snow to places like La Ronge, Uranium City, into far northern parts of the province. Looking at snowfall potential, this model picking up on some of that potential for some scattered flurries, so maybe you wake up to a dusting of snow the next couple of mornings in places like Yorkton, Kenora, Hudson Bay, but northern parts of the province, Stony Rapids, La Loche, Uranium City, I think we could even see up to 5 centimeters of snow. Temperature dependent, because we are looking at those temperatures falling as we get into the weekend here. So for Regina, here's that push of warm temperatures as we get into the weekend, looking at 3s and 4s Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We start to build in some cloud cover as we get into Sunday, and that signals that change in our pattern as we get into next week. -2 for Monday, slight chance we could see some flurries. Then temperatures -2 and -3 into next week. A bit of a different story for Saskatoon. So there's that push of warm air, 4 degrees on Saturday, Ethan, and dipping back into -6s and -7s as we start next week.
And that'll feel cold compared to this last little while. Thanks so much, Riley.
This is Dwight Cleveland's poster collection, and his goal was to find posters that you can immediately view that give you like a synopsis instantly of the movie.
Well, this private collection of classic movie posters is set to hit the auction block. More than 500 posters spanning 125 years will go under the hammer. The Wizard of Oz, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Sunset Boulevard, and Moulin Rouge are up for grabs. An original 1933 King Kong poster is expected to fetch between $40,000 and $80,000 US. The collection will be on display in London before heading to the US to be auctioned off. Stay Stay with us. We have more news coming up after the break. Well, if you're of a certain age, you'll likely remember a popular beer ad from Molson that helped galvanize our national pride 25 years ago.
I'm not a lumberjack or a fur trader, and I don't live in an igloo or eat blubber or own a dog sled.
The Rant has enjoyed a recent revival thanks to another surge of Canadian patriotism in the face of our emerging trade war with the U.S. Now there's a new version to reflect today's cross-border tensions, and it's been watched hundreds of thousands of times since hitting YouTube on Wednesday.
They think they can bully us, threaten us, and push us around, but they do not know us. That artificially drawn line they keep talking about, not artificial, and it's not on a map. It's right here. This is the land that Terry ran, the land that Gord sang about. This is the birthplace of peanut butter and ketchup chips and yoga pants. It is the land of universal health care and the bench clearing for all, of innovation and optimism and getting her done. This is the land of the peacekeeper and the Shawinigan handshake. Are we perfect? No, but we are not the 51st anything.
The full version is available on our website and the CBC News app.
All right, looking at some of your overnight temperatures, what I'd call seasonal for this time of the year, for some of us at least. -9 overnight in Regina as we head into Friday morning. Looking at temperatures -10 and colder on the eastern side of the province. This is where we have that chance, a slight chance, albeit, of a scattered flurry overnight tonight. And temperatures in the west -4 to -5 overnight tonight for many of us. Looking into northern sections, -20-ish around the northeastern part of the province, but a lot warmer where we're under a little bit more cloud cover into northwestern parts of the province. La Loche, maybe some flurries, some light snow to start the day tomorrow. And that really is the story of the day through northern sections. Clouds, maybe a few flurries, particularly the further south and the further east you go in the province. So places like Cumberland House may be getting a few flurries into the afternoon hours tomorrow. And the sun comes back as we get into northern sections by the afternoon. Starting in the -single digits for southern sections to a mainly sunny afternoon tomorrow. A few clouds here and there, though. And Ethan, maybe we see a couple of flurries, particularly the further east you go in the province through your Friday afternoon.
Okay, we'll watch for that. Thanks so much, Riley. And that is it for us for now. For more news anytime, you can always head to our website or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks so much for watching.